Hello, my dear. It's Maria. And today, I will tell you the story of the day I woke up and realized I had lost everything, while still alive. They say the body sleeps, but the soul listens. And I swear to you, I heard every word. It was the 3rd week of my coma. Machines blinked, nurses whispered, and my son, my only boy, my Daniel, sat beside my hospital bed. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, but I was there. I was present, trapped. And then I heard it, his voice, cold and practical, like he was negotiating a mortgage rate. Her house is better used by Emma's parents anyway. They're older. They need the space. She's not coming back. Let's just make it official. Emma, his wife. Always polite to my face, always distant, like I was a stubborn stain on her new family portrait. And now Daniel was giving them my home, the one I built after my husband died, the one with the cedar table and the walnut cabinets I sanded myself, the one that held every photo, every quilt, every memory of who I had been. "Don't look at me like that," he mumbled to whoever was in the room. Maybe the nurse, maybe Emma. She wouldn't want it sitting empty. Besides, legally. We can't wait forever. Legally. It's funny the way words cut when you can't defend yourself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and grab him by the hand he used to hold mine with when he was 5 and say, "Daniel, how dare you?" But all I could do was listen. My body was a prison, and my son had taken my absence as a green light to dismantle my life. The next day, the papers were signed. He said something about power of attorney and expediting transfer, and then, God help me, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom, but I thought you'd die. I thought you'd die." And that's what it came down to, didn't it? Not grief, not hope, just logistics. That night, something changed. I don't know if it was rage or sorrow or the final insult of being erased, but deep inside that locked, useless body, something stirred. A flutter behind the eyes, a pressure in my chest, and then, just like that, consciousness surfaced like a diver from the depths. The beeping of the monitor shifted, a nurse gasped, my eyes opened, and I was back. I was back. But everything was different. And Daniel didn't know what was coming. The first time I saw Daniel after waking up, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He stepped into the hospital room with Emma trailing behind him, holding her phone like it was a shield. My room smelled like hand sanitizer and fake lilac, the kind of scent that tries to cover up death. But I was sitting up now, propped against stiff white pillows, alive and watching. And I watched him freeze. "Mom," he said, voice cracking like a boy caught stealing from the pantry. You're awake." Emma didn't speak. She looked at me the way you might look at a stone that's suddenly grown eyes. Like something unnatural had happened. Something inconvenient. I didn't say a word. I let the silence do the work. Let him sit in it. Let him think about what I might remember. Do you know how long you've been?" Daniel fumbled. 27 days, I said, my voice hoarse but sharp enough to cut glass. And I remember every one of them. I saw his color drain, slow as a tide pulling back. Emma turned her face away. Daniel tried to recover. "Mom, listen, we thought there was no brain activity for days. They told us you might never—" "And so you gave them my house," I said, calm, steady, while I was still breathing. He looked down, his hands clenched. "I didn't know what else to do. You were unconscious, not dead," I snapped. "You had power of attorney, not a permission slip to erase me." He sat down heavily in the visitor's chair. I noticed how he avoided looking at me directly now, how the man who used to cry into my shoulder after nightmares was shrinking inside his own skin. Emma stepped forward, folding her arms. We weren't being malicious, Maria. My parents are in their 70s. They've been renting for years, and your house was sitting empty. You weren't using it. I was using it, I said, voice rising. I was using it to be alive, to keep your wedding photos on my mantle, to wait for you to visit, to knit socks you never came to pick up. Silence filled the room again. Daniel's voice was low now, almost a whisper. I didn't think you'd make it. I thought I'd lost you. Then you should have mourned me properly, I said, not replaced me like a cracked chair. The next day they tried to backtrack. They brought lawyers. They tried to spin things kindly, Daniel using words like temporary arrangement, and Emma murmuring paperwork error. But the deed was already filed. Her parents were already in my house, hanging their curtains, peeling my wallpaper, putting their shoes where my late husband once stood. I was too weak to walk yet, but my mind was a furnace. I asked for my brother, Nikolai, my last living sibling, my quiet protector. The day he came, with his heavy boots and heavier stare, I felt a shift, like the moment before a storm breaks. Maria, he said gently after kissing my hand. I heard. I looked him in the eye. Can you fix it? He nodded once. Watch me. And then he turned to Daniel. Get your coat, he said. We're going to clean up this mess. Now. Nikolai didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. He was a mountain of a man, built like the forests we grew up near. Broad, still, and not to be underestimated. When he entered a room, people quieted without knowing why. Daniel followed him, like a child being taken to the principal's office, shoulders tight, eyes darting. I stayed behind in my hospital bed, praying my brother still had the steel I remembered. They drove straight to my house, our house, and Nikolai didn't bother knocking. He pushed the door open, calm as can be, and stepped inside. Emma's mother was in the kitchen, slicing an apple on my marble counter like she owned the air in the walls. She looked up. Oh, hello, can I help you? Nikolai smiled politely, then walked right past her into the living room. My photographs were gone, my rug rolled up, and in its place, her father sat in my late husband's chair, flipping through a gardening magazine as if it were just another Tuesday. Nikolai stopped in front of him. You'll need to leave. The old man looked up, blinked, and chuckled like it was a misunderstanding. Sorry, what? I said, Nikolai repeated, voice like gravel over ice. You'll need to leave this house. Now. We have the deed, the man said, standing up with some difficulty. This is our home. We've signed everything legally. Your niece's husband gave us the right. Nikolai didn't move. I'm sure he did. But unfortunately for you, he gave away property that was not his to give. My sister is not dead. She is not even incapacitated anymore. She is very much alive, and she remembers everything. Emma's mother came out of the kitchen, eyes wide. But we paid. We made renovations. We've already settled in. And you'll settle out just as fast, Nikolai said. You've got 48 hours. Or what? Emma's father snapped, squaring his shoulders. Nikolai smiled that slow, dangerous smile. Or I involve the police, the courts, and every reporter in the city who wants to write about the family that stole a house from a woman in a coma. And I promise you, this won't end with a quiet apology. It'll end with an investigation. He stepped forward and whispered something in the old man's ear. I don't know what he said, but I know my brother, and I imagine it involved phrases like fraudulent transfer and elder exploitation. By that evening, the packing had begun. Daniel came to see me again the next day, pale, broken. Uncle Nikolai, he threatened them. No, I said. He reminded them of the law, and the law, Daniel, still protects the living. He sat down, his hands trembling. I didn't mean to hurt you. Then why did you rush to erase me? I asked. Why did you make it so easy to let go? I panicked, he said. I thought you'd be a ghost. I didn't know how to hold on to a ghost. I looked at him for a long time. You didn't need to hold on. You only needed to wait. Tears came. Real ones, not for show. For once my son wept like the boy he once was. I don't know how to fix this, he whispered. I touched his hand. Then start by admitting you broke it. The movers came just before dawn. Emma's parents didn't look at me when they passed through my front gate for the last time. Cardboard boxes in their arms, curtains folded over one shoulder. I sat in a wheelchair near the hedge, wrapped in my wool shawl like a queen deposed, but not defeated. My legs were still weak, but my spine had never been straighter. They avoided my eyes. Good. Daniel hovered nearby, helping carry things to the van in silence, like a man serving penance. Not once did he complain. He had lost the right to speak freely, and I think he knew it. After the final box, the door clicked shut behind them, and my home, my sanctuary, was mine again. But not untouched. The living room smelled different, like someone else's cooking oil and cheap lavender candles. They'd moved my sewing machine into the basement, boxed up my photo albums, painted over the sunflower yellow in the kitchen with a dull, hospital gray. I felt like a guest in my own past. Nikolai helped me inside. We didn't speak at first. He pushed my chair slowly over the threshold, past the patched-up place where the dent in the wall used to be, the one from when Daniel tripped and launched his toy truck in 1987. They'd painted over it. They erased everything, I murmured. He looked around and nodded, but they didn't break the bones. We sat in silence in the dining room, or what was left of it. The table was still there, but the chairs had been swapped out. IKEA, flat-packed and soulless. I ran my fingers along the edge of the table, the one my late husband and I built together during that hard winter after his diagnosis. How do I live in a home that forgot me? I asked. Nikolai leaned down, his voice gentle. You remind it. That night, I pulled out the quilts from the attic, set my porcelain teacups back in their cabinet, took the wedding photo of my parents and placed it on the mantel, where it had always belonged. I didn't speak to Emma after that. She didn't reach out. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say, or maybe she still believed she'd done nothing wrong. But Daniel came, every evening, for 2 weeks. He trimmed the garden, fixed the hinge on the back gate, sat with me as I sorted the box of unwanted items they'd packed away like forgotten laundry, my letters, my keepsakes, my memories. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. Not yet. It wasn't until the 3rd week when he brought over the old family photo album, the one that used to sit in the hallway drawer, that I saw the cracks in his armor. I found this behind the dryer, he said. Didn't want it to get lost. He sat down. We turned the pages together in silence. His fingers lingered on a picture of him as a toddler, sitting in my lap, his tiny hand grasping mine. I was scared, Mom, he said finally, of losing you, of being alone, of not knowing what to do if you never came back. I understand fear, I said, but fear doesn't excuse betrayal. His eyes welled again, and this time I didn't turn away. Can I try to make it right? He asked, voice trembling. I let the question hang in the air. The room felt different now, not healed, but healing. A soft hum of life returning to the walls, like the house was remembering me, too. I don't know, I said truthfully, but you can try. Daniel stopped apologizing after a while, not because he thought it wasn't needed, but because I stopped answering. I had grown tired of words. What I wanted now was consistency, not tears, not guilt, not long speeches about misunderstanding. I wanted to see if he could show up for something besides himself. And so I let him. Quietly. He showed up every day, brought groceries, mended the loose shutters, even took the time to clean the gutters, cursing under his breath with that familiar voice I remembered from when he was a boy and scraped his knees. One morning, I found him rearranging the living room, moving the couch back to the exact place it used to sit before Emma's mother shoved it against the opposite wall. "You remember where it goes?" I asked from the doorway. He turned, sheepish. It never looked right the other way. That night, I went through the box of old papers they'd packed without care. Buried beneath tax returns and expired coupons was a letter. My will. It was handwritten. Years ago, before hospitals and comas and betrayal. It left everything to Daniel. I stared at that signature, my own, and felt an ache in my stomach. What a fool I was, I thought. So sure he would protect what mattered. The next morning, I placed the envelope on the kitchen table. When he arrived, I pointed at it. "I need you to read this." He opened it slowly. His eyes moved across the page. I watched the guilt seep back into his shoulders. "I never even thought to check if there was one," he murmured. "You didn't think," I said. "Period." He closed the letter and nodded. "Then change it." I blinked. "I mean it," he said. "Change it. You should. I don't deserve to inherit a single doorknob in this house." I studied him carefully. The boy who once saved up to buy me a Mother's Day mug. The teenager who stole $50 from my wallet. The man who sold my home while I lay with a tube in my throat. And now, this man, this version. He looked different. Not older. Just unguarded. Like he had taken off something heavy and didn't know who he was without it. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pushed back my chair, stood with my cane, and walked past him. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To the garden," I said. "I need to think." Because forgiveness, real forgiveness, doesn't happen in hospital beds or during family dinners or right after someone cries. It happens in the quiet. It happens when you look at the damage, then look at the person who caused it, and decide whether they're still worth keeping in the house you're rebuilding. And I hadn't decided yet. I went to the garden because that's where I always went when I needed to think. Not to escape, no, I'm too old to run from anything, but to let the soil remind me who I am. I sat on the old bench under the fig tree, where my husband once dozed with the radio humming low, and Daniel used to dig for worms when he was small. The late autumn air was cool against my skin, the kind of quiet cold that carries memory in it. A blackbird hopped near my foot, cocked its head, unbothered. I sat there for nearly an hour. Inside the house, I could hear the faint rustle of Daniel moving around, maybe tidying something, maybe just pacing. He had learned, finally, not to chase me with his words, and when I was ready, I came back in. He was in the kitchen, making tea, my teapot, my cups, and bless him, not a single stupid herbal bag in sight, just good black Ceylon, the way I taught him. I sat across from him and let the warmth of the mug settle into my hands. My legs ached, my joints complained. But I was more alive than I had been in years. "I've made mistakes, too," I said finally. Daniel looked up, startled. "You?" "I trusted too easily," I said. "I thought raising a good son meant you'd always make good choices. I thought that love would be enough to keep you on the right path. And I think, somewhere along the way, I confused quietness with strength. I let things slide. I let you slide." He looked down, guilty again. But I held up my hand. "Let me finish." I took a breath. "But none of that gave you the right to forget me before I was gone. None of that excused what you did with my house or how quickly you gave my life away." He didn't speak. I nodded toward the table. "That will. It'll be rewritten." I haven't decided yet what it will say. But when I sign my name again, it will be as the woman I am now, not the mother you once assumed would never question you." He nodded. "I understand. You don't," I said. "But maybe one day you will." And then I stood up, slower this time, and walked to the shelf where my favorite album had been hidden, buried behind a stack of modern cookbooks Emma had left behind. I pulled it out, dusted the cover, and placed it between us. "Let's look through this together," I said, page by page. Daniel hesitated, then opened the first page. A photo of me, hair wild, laughing in the kitchen with flour on my cheeks, his little hand reaching up from the edge of the frame. He smiled gently. "You remember this day?" I asked. He nodded. "You let me eat the dough raw." "I was too tired to argue," I smiled. "Your father scolded me for it, said I'd spoil you." He looked at me, quiet. "You didn't." I didn't reply, but I reached out and flipped the page. We sat that way for a long time, just turning, remembering, sitting in the rubble of what was broken, with the first pieces of something new slowly forming. And still, I hadn't decided. Because memory is not a reason to forgive. It's just a reason to care. We worked side by side the next day, not speaking much, just working. There's a kind of healing in chores, you know? Folding laundry, wiping down cupboards, polishing the spots no one ever sees. It puts things back in order, not just outside, but inside. Daniel had brought back the lamp from my bedroom, the old brass one with the crooked neck and the little lace doily I'd crocheted for its base. I hadn't even asked. He just remembered. He set it down on the end table and plugged it in. "That's better," I said. He nodded. "Feels like you again." We stood there for a moment in the soft yellow light. Then, slowly, I reached into the drawer beneath the hall telephone. Yes, I still have one, and pulled out a faded envelope. I handed it to him. "What's this?" "Your father's letter," I said. "The one he wrote you before he passed." Daniel looked at me, stunned. "You never gave it to me." "You weren't ready." He turned the envelope over, then back again. "And now?" "I don't know," I said. "But it's yours to decide." I left him alone to read it. I didn't want to watch. That letter was a part of both of them. A bridge between a man who never got to see the whole arc of his son's life and a boy who had now walked into manhood the hard way. If that letter could still reach him, I didn't need to be in the room. When he came back, his eyes were red. Not swollen, not dramatic, just tired, soft. "He wrote that I'd make mistakes," Daniel whispered. "But he hoped I'd be the kind of man who didn't hide from them." I nodded slowly. "Do you think I am?" he asked. I met his eyes. "You're trying to be." He sat down beside me on the couch. "What if I never earn back your trust, Mom?" "Then that will be the price you live with," I said. "Not everything has to be repaired. Some things stay cracked. That's life." We didn't say much more that evening, just shared a meal. Chicken soup with too much pepper, the way his father liked it. And when he left, he kissed the top of my head. Like he used to. I sat alone afterward and stared at the ceiling, wondering if I'd finally turned the page in my heart. I wasn't sure yet. Maybe part of me would always guard the key a little tighter now. But I also knew this. Some people destroy trust like a wildfire. Others rebuild it like planting seeds, slow, humble, quiet. And Daniel had, at long last, picked up the shovel. It was a Thursday when I knew I'd made my decision. The day was unremarkable. Cold, overcast, wind catching in the hedges, just enough to rattle the window panes. But something in the air felt still, settled. Like my spirit had finally stopped pacing the edges of an old bruise. I called Daniel and asked him to come by after work. No excuse, no bait, just come when you can. He was at my door within the hour. He looked tired, worn in the way that a man becomes when he's been doing the long, invisible work of fixing, not for praise, but because it's right. I had the envelope ready, a new one. He saw it sitting on the table before I even spoke. "You rewrote the will," he said. I nodded. "Yes." He didn't ask what it said, not right away. He looked at me first, studied me like he used to when he was small and trying to guess whether he was in trouble or safe. "I don't want it if you're giving it out of guilt," he said, "or habit, or fear that I'll fail again if I don't get a second chance." "It's none of those," I said. "It's choice, mine." He looked down at his hands. "I know I don't deserve it." "Maybe not," I said, "but you're becoming someone who might." He swallowed hard, eyes shining. "What changed your mind?" "You didn't," I said. "I did." I reached for his hand across the table. "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what someone did," I said. "It's remembering that they're more than their worst moment. You were wrong, Daniel. Deeply. But I watched you stay. I watched you do the work brick by brick. You let me be angry. You gave me space. You didn't beg for shortcuts." He was quiet. I squeezed his hand gently. "You earned back a door. Not the whole house. Not yet. But a door." He exhaled a long breath, and I watched something fall from his shoulders. Not shame, exactly, but the burden of waiting for a verdict. "I'll never hurt you like that again," he said. "I believe you mean that," I replied. "And that's a start." We didn't celebrate. There was no dramatic hug, no sweeping music playing in the background. Just two people sitting at an old wooden table in a home that had once been lost and was slowly being lived in again. Before he left, he turned back at the doorway. "I read Dad's letter again last night," he said. He ended it with, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to finish teaching you, so listen to your mother. She knows the rest." I smiled. That man, always the last word. I watched Daniel walk to his car, shoulders straighter than I'd seen them in years. When the door clicked shut, I stood for a moment in the silence of my home. I ran my fingers over the frame of the family photo we'd hung above the patched dent in the hallway. It was still crooked, just a little. I left it that way, because things don't need to be perfect to be whole. Some scars don't need covering, they need honoring.